Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and I thought I'd take you along on something I like to do every now and then. Today we're going to look at some cards that I think are worth their price. See, nowadays we have so many sets that come out. Magic is like a constant, a churning machine that just puts out Magic cards at such a rate that's really easy to miss some cards here and there that are rather good. But the thing is I also really care about cheap cards. See, I have a mortgage I have to pay, so I can't build all of the Magic decks I'd like. It's kind of partially why I built this channel, so that I could see more decks and build more decks without having to spend money on them. So with that in mind, what I like to do is every few months, I'll look back on a set that's passed. A set that's already kind of gone in and out of my brain. All the pre-releases are done, Standards has figured out the cards, and there's like no modern cards anymore to put in there. And so we've all just kind of turned away from it. And usually there's kind of a drop in price for everything but like the most expensive cards in the set. And with that, I like to look back and see if there's a few cards I can pick up that I think are stronger than their price indicates. So for me, looking back at 2023, Phyrexia All Will Be One was the first one on my list. I think technically Commander Masters came out before that, but I figured I'd do that another time. So let's start with a non-Commander product. Was it even Commander Masters? I think it was Commander Masters, but a reprint product came out, and I'd rather look at something that brought new things in. Phyrexia All Will Be One was kind of a divisive set. I think even now, I really like it, but I think Toxic and Infect and Poison counters has a bit of a reputation, and so I think a lot of people didn't find a lot of cards in there unless they were building hyper-specific decks. So looking back, here's a few of the cards in that set that I think are worth looking at, and I think that we should kind of keep an eye on, and if you want, pick up a few copies of. The first one is, I think, probably the weakest one, but Infested Fleshcutter is a card that I just keep coming back to. And it is a little expensive. It's 1 in a white and then 2 in a white to equip. So outside of like equipment decks, I don't see it that much. But the thing I really like about this is the accessibility of the mites. The thing is, the mites are really, really strong. I think they're deceptively strong. There's a thing about poison counters that makes a lot of Commander players kind of panic a little bit. They get nervous, they start assuming that all of it's going to come at them, and it gets them acting unwise. It gets them making mistakes and, being rash. The thing is, almost all of the toxic creatures and toxic cards aren't that good outside of toxic and infect shells. But I think this one is one of the exceptions. This, and I also think there is the enchantment where that creates a mite every turn. I think those are the two exceptions. Actually, there is a third in here. But this one especially catches my eye because if you're an equipment deck or you're an attack trigger deck, this is a pretty easy inclusion, especially if you're playing within like a $50 budget. If you can pick this card up less than 25 cents, it'll do great for a $50 budget. Attach this to a creature, especially with evasion, and you are producing extra attackers every single turn. And those attackers being somewhat threatening, doing about, doing 10% of an opponent's health per hit is pretty impressive. So this is kind of one of the weaker ones and kind of a boring card, but I think it's really, really cool. Another one that really, really catches my eye is Mercurial Spelldancer. This is a card that I am flabbergasted is at 35 cents. If you are playing any form of blue, spell slinger, spells matters, this card I think you should give a consideration. Now, if this kind of deck benefits off of things like Cypher, even better. But without that, I think Mercurial Spelldancer is a creature that says, let's see, every 2 spells you cast, so every third spell, let's say, every third spell you cast is doubling. Is that even true? You cast 1, you cast 2, and then you double that. So yeah, every third, sorry, I'm having a math crisis. Every third spell you cast is doubled. And I think that's just really good. I think I would play that in a lot of decks if we just had that idea every third spell is doubled. That's not even including the fact that this does incidental damage and not including things like proliferate, right? That allows you to get even more and reduce that from every third spell to every second spell and what have you. So I think Mercurial Spelldancer is very much so a slept on card. I remember I had a friend tell me that they thought it was going to be very good in Legacy. That friend is known for hot takes, but this is a card that's just really, really strong. So I want to throw it out there. If you can get this for 35 cents, once again, if you're playing like $50 to $100 budget deck, this is just a very, very good inclusion. Another one that I think is also being slept on is Vat of Rebirth. This one's a lot more straightforward. It is a reanimation card that is fueled by creatures and artifacts dying. So artifact engine decks and creature aristocrats decks really benefit from this. I think maybe when people see this card, they assume they're going to only be able to do it once, like that a part of the cost is to sacrifice the Vat of Rebirth, but that's not actually true. The Vat of Rebirth just says, you know, once every time 4 things go to the graveyard, you get 1 thing back for 3 mana. And I think especially in aristocrats, but also in engine decks, you're going to get the value out of this. So I think this is a very impressive card. At 36 cents, I think you can get it very, very easily. And if you're looking for aristocrats on a budget, I think this is a great card. This one I don't like as much, but I thought it's worth noting. Necrogen Communion has that ability that you don't see very often that says when enchanted creature dies, you reanimate it immediately. There's a lot of black or black adjacent flicker decks. I'm thinking like Cardor. I'm thinking about, is it Geth? No, it's Gonti. Like Gonti as well. These black decks that want to flicker things in a color that doesn't have access to a lot of flicker. And so this is another card that does that, and it's at 2 mana, which I would say is a pretty good rate. 2 mana, it's not instant speed, so it is proactive, which is nice, but it also means that you might not get the chance to enchant it if you run out of mana. I do like this. I think this is a much more niche card, but on a budget, it is a very, very good card. Also, the Toxic 2 on this is pretty good. That's 20% of someone's health. If you put this on the right creature, I think you can really benefit from the Toxic 2. I think this card is pretty good, honestly. Here's another card that I never thought would be 25 cents. Cacious Hellraiser. So this had a big draw. There is a modern player named Aspiring Spike that really, really liked this card and kind of went all in on decks to make this work. Long story short, it didn't happen, unfortunately, but that doesn't stop this from being a good card, and it doesn't stop it from being uniquely strong in Commander. See, the main thing about Cacious Hellraiser in 1v1 formats is that you desperately need this half to trigger. And I think the reason this card is so cheap right now and doesn't see play a lot in other formats is because this is what we hyper-focus on. We hyper-focus on getting the fact that we think we need to get 9 cards into the graveyard. And ideally, cards that are not creatures and not lands so that Cacious Hellraiser can cast that. So what if we stepped away from that and just thought of this as a 6 mana creature that has this ability? And think about it either in ramp or in dragons. Both of these decks are very, very happy to be getting to 6 mana. And having a 4/4 flyer that casts one of your cards in your graveyard back again is pretty good. As long as you have, actually it's 3 cards, so like as long as you have the fewer cards you have in your graveyard, the better this card gets. Imagine this being like a cross between Ewit. It's an Ewit that casts the spell for like double the mana. And I think a lot of people would play this, especially if you're playing, once again, in budget at 25 cents, you can put this into a lot of decks. But also, if you're playing like lower power, this is a really, really good card. I think you can play this and have a lot of fun. And late game, where it's just 3 red, with the higher chance of not getting a particularly good card, but getting a 3 mana 4/4, that's still a good deal. In green, we have Bloated Contaminator. This is probably one of the more expensive cards on the list. It's $2. I just wanted to bring attention to this because if you are playing any form of proliferation strategy, I think you should consider this card. I mean any sort. I'm talking sagas, I'm talking poison, I'm talking +1/+1 counters, I'm talking -1/-1 counters. Definitely consider this card. In fact, I think I do have this in my Hapatra deck, but I should make sure. This card is just very, very efficient for what it does. It is a 4/4 for 3, it has trample, it has toxic, and it proliferates. If you can put 1+1/+1 counter on this creature, you are in business. It's just very, very strong. And having a card that just carries so much weight so easily, I think is something a lot of decks benefit from. And so at $2, that's a bit outside of what I would call a $50 budget, but you could probably make this card fit in a $100 budget deck where each card is about $1. I think you can definitely make this fit. So this is a card that I expect to rise in price over the years. So if you find this at all interesting, I would probably pick it up. On the flip side, Thirsting Roots, everything I just said, just a little more boring. It is a 1 mana card that can proliferate or get you a basic land. That's it. It's not too fancy. It's just worth considering. If you like these strategies, this one probably will not go up in price, but you don't if you're doing an order anyways, pick up like 6 of them. That's what I tend to do. If I find a card that I really like, I see if they have like 6 to 8 of them, I just pick them up. And I know if I'm playing a commander deck that cares about this, and in like a proliferate deck that tends to be in green, this is just an easy inclusion. Going into multicolor, Rhea Ivore. This is the other Might Creation card that I think is particularly good. Honestly, I don't think I would play her as a commander, but I will say that I think the political aspect of her ability is really slept on. Her ability to go and attack, make a deal with a player, attack them, and convert like their damage of any creature you have into mites is a really, really good deal. You do not need to be playing mites or infect or toxic for this card to be good. If you play this out and you look at me, for example, and you say, hey, let me attack you with my biggest creature. I will prevent the damage and make mites. And for as long as I can, like those mites will be goaded against you. If I have to attack you at the end of the game, if it's the 2 of us, that's fine. But until then, none of the mites go towards you. I would take that deal. That's a pretty sweet deal. It's a lot of pressure on your opponents. It's taking damage off the field from my perspective that could have gone to me anyways. I think it's a pretty good deal. And if nothing else, this Battle Cry ability, just really, really good. So overall, I think this card is a lot stronger than people give it credit for. And at 23 cents, I think if you're playing any form of black-white tokens, Abzan tokens, something, $50-ish budget, this is a great card to pick up. And I think it will outperform, at that budget level. Going into the Commander cards that came out the Commander set, these are the cards I tend to really be interested in because obviously they're built for the format, but they're always so polarized. There are cards that, there's always that one Commander card that's like $10, $12, but the rest of them tend to be just cheap, but still very powerful. And Glimmer Lens is the one that I really think is being criminally underplayed. If you can get this under 50 cents, if you are in white and you have creatures, play this card. I would give it a go, right? This is just a card that if you attack with 2 creatures draws you a card, not including the equipment synergy. I think this is really, really good. Just think of it as a 2 mana 2/2 that when you attack with 2 creatures you draw a card. That's just strong. It's almost like a Dark Confidant when you think about getting the trigger on the next turn. I know it's not exactly that because you have to attack, but even if they block and kill the creature, you still keep the Glimmer Lens. This is very, very good. I wonder if this will go up to $1 or $2 in the future, but for now, I really think it's strong and I think it's worth playing. The one that's a little more at $1, Skyhunter Strike Force. So this is a little more niche, but I think it's still very, very strong. I think this is a deceptively strong card. If I asked you, in any token deck, if you had a card that said with your commander out, all your tokens get +3/+3, would you play it? A lot of you probably would, because I think one of the backgrounds does that at 2/2, right? It gives +2/+2 when your commander's out. This gives +3/+3 when your commander's out. All you need to do is attack 1 creature at each opponent and send the rest as you want. There's a chance you were already attacking all 3 of your opponents, and all of your tokens, all of your creatures, they all get +3/+3. Until that point, if your commander's not out, the fact that this keeps melee and becomes basically a 5/5 on attack is also very, very strong. At 92 cents, I don't know if I would play this, you know, in $50 decks. I probably wouldn't, but at $100 decks, I would definitely consider it. And if you're getting out of that budget zone, I think this is a pretty good pickup. Once again, if you're playing any kind of deck that cares about attacking, I think this is a particularly strong card. I find that I don't play it because a lot of my commanders tend to be at 3 mana, but if you're playing a 2 mana or a 4 mana commander, this gets really, really attractive. Hexplate Wallbreaker. This one really interests me because once again, this is a 4 Mirrodin equipment card that doesn't feel like it only belongs in equipment cards. Really, it's a 5 mana 4/4 that when this attacks the first time each turn, you get another attack. Right? That's good, right? Like, I don't understand how this is just still under $1. A lot of these Take Another combats tend to go up quite a bit, and this is a Take Another combat that comes with a creature, is not dependent on that creature. If the creature removes, you get to keep this equipment, and the only downside is that if the creature dies, you gotta pay 4 for the effect, and without haste, the effect doesn't come in right away. This feels strong. Like, am I just wrong about this? This just feels kind of strong, especially in a lot of go wide decks, obviously in equipment decks, but in a lot of points where you're like, you know, think of the decks that would play this just as a 4/4, just a 5 mana 4/4 that when it attacks, you get another attack. I don't know. I think that's good enough. It's not Port Razor, don't get me wrong, but Port Razor is also not 82 cents, so I'll leave that to you. The last one out of the commander cards, just as general cards, is Lux Artillery. Lux Artillery is an interesting card. I think, let's put it like this. You're playing an artifact deck. You're playing an artifact creature deck. Would you, depending on the colors, would you play 4 mana, all your creatures enter with 2+1/+1 counters? Right? I think I would. Honestly, I think you can power this out. Artifact decks are known for making a lot of colorless mana or any kind of mana, and then artifact creatures tend to be, but not always are, just colorless, right? And with that, if you have 2 colors to start putting into like mirror and stuff like that, all of a sudden your mirror coming in with 2+1/+1 counters. I think that's good, right? I think this other line of text is just kind of gravy, but I would definitely just play this for its front half, especially if you're in Proliferate, especially if you can make, you know, like do something with these counters. I think this is nominal. If you get into bigger creatures and more colors, it gets neater, but I think generally if you're just using this to cast 2 mana like Mirror and the like, you're going to be really happy with the results. So this is a card that I feel is stronger than the credit it's been given. And at 24 cents, this fits right into a $50 deck, right? And if you are in a $100 deck, I would still consider this. And if you are trying like Mere Kindred or anything silly like that, where you're just trying fun things, Lux Artillery feels really, really good. All right, so I'm going to finish off this video with 2 cards that are commanders that I think are worth being reminded they exist, because if you've forgotten about these cards, like I do, there's so much commander product, I think it's worth coming back and remembering that these cards can be commanders to build. Othari, Sun's Glory, is not just a very, very good commander, but an excellent 99 card in any attack deck, right? This card is just so strong. It just generates such value on attack. It is, you know, a flying 3/3 lifelink. It has haste. It brings itself back after that first attack. This is a good card. And if you're not going to use it as a commander, I think you can just use it as like a card in the 99 if you're playing Boros and other colors, right? This is just a good card. I am flabbergasted. I think the only reason, like obviously the $3, which has gone down in price since I clicked that, it's crazy. The $3 version is only there because otherwise the version you get is always foil, and I personally don't like the always foils, but this card is really, really cool. So if you've slept on this, if you've thought about it and forgotten about it, this is a card I would recommend going back to and thinking if you want to build something out of it. The other one is Vishgrz. Vishgrz is a favorite of mine. I think this card was slept on a lot. I remember watching like the Command Zone talk about it when it first came out because they were impressed about it, but I think a lot of people are only reading these 2 lines. The +1/+1 for each poison counter, and the fact that it is a menace toxic. Namely this line, right? People are thinking about it, they go, hey, it comes out, you start attacking people, then you kind of have to juggle poison counters on all of your opponents, because if you kill an opponent, this actually goes down in power. But if your opponents each have, like, let's say they're just poison, what is the poisonous? They each have 3. This is a 12-12. Ooh, 12-12 menace toxic, right? That's a really good stat line. And I think people hyper focus on this, whereas I'm going to tell you, hyper focus on this part. Hyper focus on the fact that this creates 3/1/1 mites. That's it. That's what you should focus on. I think it is very much so underrated to think of a Vishgrz deck that is or like, just think of a commander for 5 mana that creates 3 artifact creatures. That's really, really good. I don't care if they can't block. I don't care if they're mites and we don't play any other toxic or infect. It creates 3/1/1s. That's just very, very strong. I had a Vishgrz deck for a while that I played on MTG Mudspa's channel, which was, I played it once and it did I think I won that game. Maybe I should find the link and put it in the description, but let's say I did. The link is in the description. One of the things about this card is that you just play it as a blink deck. Don't play this as I mean, you can, don't listen to me, but instead of playing this as a toxic or infect deck, think of playing this as a blink deck, and I think you'll be very, very happy with the results. And I think that's it. Those are the cards I've looked at for Phyrexia. All will be one that I think are just still worth a lot and are very, very cheap. If you find this interesting, let me know. I might make a few others. Like I said, this is something I do for myself, you know, every few months, and I can do it more often because we have a lot of sets to go through. So if people are interested, I will make more. All right. Good luck and happy building. Thank you so much for watching. This video is brought to you by viewers like you and people on my Patreon. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck, or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you'd like to make your deck one of my donation decks I work on, there's a link there too. Finally, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thank you and good luck in brewing and building.